Hello everyone, a warm good morning to all. So today we have a special guest, Dr. Abhay G.S, Assistant Professor, Department of Archaeology, University of Kerala, Thiruvananthapuram. Sir is going to talk on the title Fish, Shellfish, Crabs, and the Harappans, studies on aquatic animal resources in Harappan, Gujarat. Uh, we warmly welcome you to the platform of History Enthusiasts, sir. It's our honor to have you with History Enthusiasts, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I also take this opportunity to welcome our honorary president Sri Nandan Shastri ji and founder president Miss Manali Momaya and all the audience who are joining us through this session. So now I request Ms. Manali Momaya to introduce our today's resource person, Dr. Abhayan G.S. Over to you, Manali.
Thank you very much, Nidhi, for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Abhayan G.S., an accomplished archaeologist and assistant professor in the Department of Archaeology, University of Kerala, with an academic journey spanning a post graduation from the University of Kerala, a PG diploma from the Archaeological Survey of India, and a PhD from the Deccan College, Pune. Dr. Abhayan specializes in zooarchaeology, particularly ichthyoarchaeology, which focuses on fish bones remains from Harappan contexts in Gujarat. He has been instrumental in establishing the Zooarchaeology Laboratory at the University of Kerala and has conducted faunal analysis at numerous excavated sites across India. His research spans Indus archaeology and Iron Age archaeology, complemented by the practical experience in directing and participating in archaeological excavations. Dr. Abhayan is also a co editor of the journal Heritage, Journal of Multidisciplinary Studies in Archaeology, and has an impressive repertoire of academic contributions, including 41 research papers, 28 articles, and 6 edited books. Today, he brings the expertise to the history enthusiasts to discuss fish, shellfish, crabs, and the Harappan studies on and the Harappans studies on aquatic animal resources in Harappan, Gujarat. We are excited to have you, sir, and looking forward to this very interesting lecture. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Over to you, sir.
I have to
Uh,
unmute.
yeah.
I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And very warm good morning to all. And first of all, I am very thankful to the history enthusiast group for arranging this kind of a talk in which I am invited. Thank you so much. And today, what I am going to talk here is about the Harappans and their association with the different kinds of aquatic animals for food and related purposes. And in this talk, I will be talking more on the contribution of fish for the Harappans. This is going to be slightly a technical talk, and I will be using some scientific names, and I will try to use common names of many of these species as much as possible. My second slide is showing, right?
Yes, it's showing, sir.
Yes.
Fine. Let's say about Indus civilization. Everybody knows that Indus civilization was extensively spread over an area starting from south and Gujarat to the fringes of Afghanistan in the north, and in Indian part, of course, Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab, Gujarat are the core areas of Harappan civilization. And apart from that, there are so many sites in the Pakistan side as well. And everybody knows that Indus civilization is not confined to a single kind of a unanimous period. It has different phases within that. It starts with the Neolithic phase in the beginning, and it comes to the pre-urban level. And in different regions, there are different kinds of traditions, different kinds of pottery traditions associated with pre-urban. And there are certain Harappan elements that we can identify from these pre-urban levels onwards. Then it comes to urban level, which is considered to be the most prosperous time period of the Harappan civilization. Then it comes to a post-urban period, and it gradually declines, and it kind of disappears. And in today's talk, I will be talking more about urban phase and post-urban phase. My data mostly comes from the urban and post-urban phases, and I will be trying to bring out some sort of differences or some sort of changes that occur from urban Harappan level to post-urban Harappan level in terms of aquatic animal resource utilization. See, the Harappan civilization's animal-based subsistence has been reconstructed by the efforts of zooarchaeological studies. What is zooarchaeology? Zooarchaeology is nothing but the study of animal remains from archaeological contexts. Of course, from archaeological excavations, these kind of small and large sized animal bones are usually recovered. These are mostly found in almost everywhere in an archaeological site, along with pottery and all other artifacts. These kind of things can also be collected. And these small bone fragments can be studied, and some sort of results can be brought in. That is called zooarchaeology. And through the efforts of zooarchaeological research, it is proven that animal domestication, especially the mammals and the hunting of wild mammals, these are all very, very, very vogue in during the Harappan civilization. And among that, cattle domestication was extremely well flourished. I mean, cattle was kind of a backbone for the animal-based subsistence of the Harappans. Along with that, you can see sheep, goat domestication as well, and in minimal quantities, you may find other domesticated animals like chicken, pig, many things. And also, they have been utilizing a lot of different wild species, especially deer species, small mammals like hare, porcupine, so many animals which are available in wild. And there was a balance between this domestication and the hunting practices. Meanwhile, these studies actually started very early in the beginning itself, when the Harap excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro started, and the materials were collected from these sites. And these materials were also studied in the early 1930s itself. And from that time onwards, we have been looking into this animal-based subsistence of the Harappans, mainly through the lens of mostly focusing on mammals. Meanwhile, certain taxa specific studies are relatively very few. For example, studies specifically on shell remains, fish remains, bird remains, similarly reptilian remains. These are all mostly overlooked. There are so many reasons also for that. There was a lack of adequate osteological reference collections, which are necessary for any zooarchaeological study. That was lacking for these particular categories of relatively neglected animals. And there has been a focus towards site-specific faunal reports, as well as there were some sort of biases in the collection of samples from many of the excavations in early times. But what happens in later excavations, people started giving more attention towards collecting them properly. Proper sieving methods have been implemented in many excavations. As a result, of course, all these smaller animal remains have been coming to the hands of zooarchaeologists. And gradually, this kind of reference collection have also been developed for addressing these kind of faunal remains from the sites. So in this talk, I will be talking about the Gulf of Kutch region based on a few sites called Bagashra, Kanmir, Shikarpur, Navinal, and Kotadabadli. These 5 sites are taken for the study. All these sites are located in the Gulf of Kutch region, and this region is very potential in terms of aquatic resources, especially because of having a very dynamic coastal belt in this region. And this coastal line is actually very unique with the presence of this run of Kutch. That is a unique estuarine environment where a lot of different animals, or especially these aquatic animal resources, can be found. And this is, as I mentioned before, in zooarchaeology, there are some sub branches. That one of the sub branches is ichthyoarchaeology, that is the study of fish remains from archaeological context. Of course, for studying these ichthyoarchaeological samples, you need to have a reference collection. And for this study, the reference collection a large reference collection was basically used, which consists of about 300 fish specimens representing 143 different species, which are kept currently in the University of Kerala. We have an ichthyoarchaeology section at the Zooarchaeology Lab in the University of Kerala. And this facility is actually helping out to find out this fish identification basically. And this is the close view of the Gulf of Kutch region, where we can see the studied sites. The sites are all located very close to the Run of Kutch region. And these sites are very unique in terms of many of its features. For example, many of these sites are fortified settlements. And you can see the settlements within the fortification as well as outside the fortifications. And this is very significant when it comes to a later stage of this presentation. The findings from within the fortification and from outside the fortification can also imply certain meanings. And especially these 3 sites, Kanmir, Bagashra, and Shikarpur, these 3 are very well fortified and very extensively excavated. And the interesting part is that from these sites, other faunal materials have been studied properly by other zooarchaeologists as well. That means we have a very good understanding of the mammalian utilization patterns from these sites. In addition to that, I am trying to give some additional inputs towards aquatic animal resources utilization at these sites. So these are the identified fish species, or broadly the fish categories from these sites. Within the brackets, we can see the number of specimens, total specimens collected from the excavations. And it represents 13 fish families, which represent 28 different fish varieties, which include a lot of sea catfish, a different different species within sea catfish as well. And there are Baramundi, that is a common name. There are so many different species of croakers, and there are some sharks there, rayfish there, sea breams are there, and there are freshwater fish as well, like freshwater catfish, rohu, etc., etc. And there are some, from the picture you can see that some of the fish remains have been represented in very minimal quantities, but meanwhile some other fish categories are represented in large numbers. Obviously that represents their differences in the utilization of certain kind of fish. It might be because of the availability of these kind of fish in the vicinities. First, we look at Bagasra. So the site of Bagasra has four different phases within that, and those represent urban phase and also post-urban phase. First three phases, phase 1, 2, 3, represent different stages of urban phases. And overall, during this urban phase, you can see the utilization of marine fishery as well as estuarine fishery. And along with that, there is a marginal utilization of freshwater fishery. From the pictures, you can see the kind of fish varieties which were present in different proportions at the site. What is interesting here is towards the post-urban phase, along with the marine estuarine fishery, there is an increased presence of a specific group of fish that belong to Bagridae family, especially the member called Mistus species. This is a small catfish variety which is usually seen in the freshwater environments. You can see a kind of increased quantity of Bagridae towards the post-urban phase. And this interesting pattern can be seen in other sites also. If you see the data from Kanmir, Kanmir has also four different stages. One is one slight or flimsy deposits of early Harappan, then mature Harappan in two phases, 2A and 2B phases. And comes to Kanmir 3, that is the late Harappan, which is equivalent to post-urban period. In different size, different terminologies are used by the excavators. That is the reason I also use the same terminology the excavators have used. Here also, apart from the marine estuarine fishery, along with the marginal freshwater fishery, towards the late phase of the Harappan or towards the post-urban phase, you can see a slight increase in the presence of Bagridae, especially this Mister species again. That indicates the exploitation of freshwater environments during the late phase. The data from Shikarpur is also showing mostly of marine estuarine fishery exploitation. So altogether, when we see one particular fish species dominates largely, that is lattice calcarifer, that is Baramundi in common English. And this is a single species that dominates in almost all the sites from almost all the assemblages. And along with that, we can see the members of Aridae, that is sea catfish. They are also represented in very large quantities. And then comes towards the last phase, especially towards the late Harappan phase, there is an increased presence of Bagridae. And there could be some reasons that could be assigned to the increased presence of Bagridae in the phase 4 or towards the later phase. There could be some sort of environmental change or some sort of changes in the environmental settings. It could also be associated with some sort of cultural change, some sort of change in the preference of fish consumers that could also give this kind of a pattern. Towards the late phase, there could be it's possible that there is a shortage of infrastructure and expertise for the marine fishery, so that people move towards freshwater fishery exploitation as well. It is also possible that a small scale fishery practice it was introduced by a parallel group of fishermen. This could also be connected to the cultural changes that happened at these sites. And of course, these in terms of cultural changes, late Harappan phase also witnessed a lot of different cultural changes at all these sites. If you look at the fish exploitation areas, this is the region where the Gulf of Kutch is like this, and towards inside the Ran of Kutch extends. Probably during that time, the Ran of Kutch was all filled with this kind of estuarine environment. Sometimes, even today, this region is filled with water during the wet season, and during the dry season, this region dries up almost completely with with an extensive salt deposits on the surface. But during the Harappan times, this could be an environmental. I mean, this could be a kind of estuarine environment. When we see the fish exploitation zones, this is the deep sea fishing. That is the area they used relatively very less. Probably a few fish species was coming from this region. They were going for deep sea fishing as well. And this is the area where most of these fish were caught. That is the marine or kind of estuarine environment, which is adjacent to the sea, and there are a lot of estuaries and creeks present in this region. That region is very rich in terms of fish resources. This is the area they exploited in a very large manner. And in addition to that, they have also exploited these freshwater resources, like freshwater ponds and streams that are connected to this marine estuarine environment. There are some small streams that ultimately joins to the estuaries. And among these three zones of fish exploitation, they exploited maximum of fish varieties from this region. This can be said because of the identification of these fish species from the assemblages. Meanwhile, they rarely ventured into the deep sea for fishing in the deep sea. I mean, at least some of the fish remains indicate that they occasionally went out for fishing off sea. So when we see the differences in fish consumption inside and outside the fortification, especially at Bagasta, if you look at in phase 2 and phase 3, there is a difference in terms of their utilization in marine fish consumption. In the phase 1, the utilization within the fortification and outside the fortification was kind of similar. People were having similar access to both the resources. But when it comes towards the late urban phase or towards the phase 3, that is the late part of urban phase, there you can see a decreased use of marine fish in the outside of the fortification. That means the inside dwellers were having access to more marine fish. And also some of the freshwater fish also, especially the large sized freshwater fish was also available mostly for the inside dwellers. The similar pattern can be reflected in the site of Shikarpur as well. The inside outside marine fish consumption differs here as well. When it comes to late urban phase, that is phase 2, there is this kind of change. That means the outside dwellers were having less access to marine fish or the best catch. It is obvious that the size of the fish was also very large from inside the fortification. And this could also indicate a difference in the economy of the people who lived outside and inside the fortification. People who lived inside the fortifications were probably economically in a better position so that they could enjoy the best catch that was coming to the settlement. Meanwhile, the outside dwellers were having a slightly lesser economy. That's the reason probably they didn't have access to the best catch of the fisheries. And meanwhile, some crab remains are also represented in larger numbers from the outside the fortification area. From the site of Navinal, a large number of fish otoliths were found. Fish otoliths are these kinds of small structures which are formed inside the cranium of fish. In certain species of fish, these otoliths are very large in size and they are likely to get preserved in archaeological sites. And this is the best example at this site where we could collect a large number of fish otoliths. Meanwhile, the presence of fish bones were very, very limited. And meanwhile, these otoliths were represented in large numbers. And with the help of these otoliths, we could identify the fish species very accurately from these otoliths. And also, in addition to that, a lot of crab remains can be seen like these. These are the crab fingers which are preserved at the site in very good numbers. And these some of these otoliths have been dated also, as these remains were collected from the surface exploration, and it was dated and it securely got a association with the Harappan phase. And this is the picture of the site of Navinal. This is how the surface exposure is seen at the site. And if you look closer, these kind of large number of shell remains can also be seen. And obviously, these the Harappans were experts in making a lot of different objects out of different kinds of shells. Especially the kind of Turbinella pyrum is the kind of species of shell that was utilized in most of these craft activities. But in addition to that, a large number of molluscans, especially these shell remains, have been consumed also. There, many of them are very good edible varieties of fish. For example, if you see at the site of Navinal, you can see this particular species dominating like anything. See here, Babylonia spirata is the mostly utilized edible shell variety at this site. And also, there are other small species like Thais carinifera. These are all good for consumption. And this definitely indicates that they were also utilizing a lot of different shell varieties. And there are certain shell midden sites reported from different parts of Kutch region. Especially some of these shell midden sites have been located and dated in the pre-Harappan levels as well. Some of them were like this is also a kind of indication of the initiation of the settlements in the part of Run of Kutch region, especially in the Gulf of Kutch region. And they, in the initial stage onwards, they were supported with this kind of shell remains, which is evident from the pre-Harappan shell midden sites from Bambanga and many other sites, which have mostly been explored by Dr. Prabhagar from IIT Gandhinagar. And if you look at the fish bones, there are so many modifications found, especially the cut marks. If you see these kind of vertebrae have been cut, that is definitely an indication of processing the fish for distribution or for consumption. In addition to that, there are burn marks or kind of charred marks. They might have roasted the fish, but definitely all the burn marks may not be associated with consumption. Sometimes they discard the waste and sometimes they put it in fire, and as a garbage management, they fire the whole things. But apart from that, some of the semi-charred bones, especially the cranial fragment of Netuma thalassina, that is a sea catfish, which is kind of an evidence for roasting of this particular fish. And in addition to that, some other modifications can also be seen like this. For example, this particular specimen is with some slicing marks on that. This is probably an attempt to make some kind of a tool out of a fish fin spine. Probably they tried to make a needle kind of thing. We do not know exactly. But there are this kind of vertebrae with a perforation in the middle. Probably they use this kind of vertebrae as beads or some other objects of their day-to-day life. And in this way, also fish remains or the things that are coming out of fish have been utilized. If you see the bone element-wise distribution of cut marks, most of the cut marks are distributed on certain kind of bone elements, especially on vertebral fragments, also from the cranial fragments. But other fish bones are relatively with very less number of cut marks. Most of the cut marks have been reported from these particular portions of the fish, which indicate a kind of butchery practice. Probably they were cutting the fish through the head portion so that the cut happens on the neurocranium. That is the reason we get more number of cut marks on the cranial fragments. And also they have been probably cutting the fish into different small chunks of meat. Probably they were filleting, and all these evidence indicate that different kind of a fish processing or fish carcass processing. If you see the bone element wise distribution, especially at the site of Kanwir, this interesting pattern can be seen. There is a lower representation of lower cranial elements, that is these kind of bones, the bones which are coming from the anterior part of the head portion. And these bones are relatively very low represented. I mean, they are number wise, they are very low represented. And meanwhile, cletrum, that is a particular bone which is located towards this side. We can say this is a collarbone. When you remove the opercular cleft of this fish, that is the usual pattern of processing the fish. And this portion is likely to be there, or it remains as part of the fish body. I mean, when the fish was, that means the fish was processed at some different site and it was brought to the site along with cletrum on this fish. This is definitely an indication of fish processing again. Probably they transported this fish in fresh form. If towards the long distance, then they probably dried it or they salted. The exact way we do not know. But one thing is quite sure, that they processed the fish at different place, and they brought the fish at the site for consumption in a ready to consume form, rather than bringing the whole fish to the site. Obviously, some of the fish have been brought to the site in whole as well. That is the reason we get other cranial elements even in smaller numbers. And certain patterns can be seen, and apart from this fish fauna or this aquatic animal resources, at the site of Bagastra and Shikarpur, some consumption patterns or some differences in consumption patterns can be seen with regard to the sheep, goat, and cattle proportions inside and outside the fortifications at Bagastra. The inside dwellers were having more access to mutton rather than beef. That is happening. That kind of a pattern can be observed from Bagastra and Shikarpur as well. And also from the site of Kanmir, certain features like differences or proportions in the wild animal exploitation can be seen. towards, if you see here, towards the late phase of the Harappan, utilization of wild animals is increasing towards the side. This pattern can be compared along with the increased presence of bagridae fish or the kind of freshwater fish presence at this site. And also at the site of Kanmir, there are some shifts in agricultural practices as well. You can see some more presence of millets towards the late phase of this site. And these changes can also be connected in terms of the utilization of aquatic animal resources as well. See, another interesting evidence is the presence of marine fish from the site of Coated Abadli. This Coated Abadli is almost 50-60 kilometers inside this land. That means the sea is so far. That means these marine fish were brought to the site for consumption. Obviously, it must have been processed or dried or salted. In some form, it was brought to the site. What is important is that it was transported towards such a long distance, which could also be connected with the preferences people were having in connection with the kind of fish species they prefer. Probably there was a kind of demand for marine fish. That is the reason they brought the fish from this long distance. And the utilization of marine fish has also been attested from other side, like in the at the site of Harappa, which is located nearly 800 kilometers away from the sea. At the site Harappa, earlier Dr. William Belcher has reported some of the marine fish species from the site. That means they have been transporting at some fish this long at this particular context. And this was not an isolated example here in Harappa. That was happening in this part of Harappan regime as well. When we compare the fish exploitation in Pakistan region, there we can see the overrepresentation of Pomadasis hasta, that is a fish species that is mostly occurring at Balakot and Aladino. That is a comparable site with this Gulf of Kutch region. That is the reason why this particular species, Pomadasis hasta, even today also occur in large quantities in the coastal side of Aladino, especially in the Karachi region. Meanwhile, this species is even currently also less represented in the Gulf of Kutch region. That is well reflected in the archaeological records as well. Meanwhile, here in the Gulf of Kutch region, latest calcarifer or barramundi is the most dominating species, which is naturally available even today in this coastal part, along with the catfish. Catfish, of course, is there in Balakot, Aladino sites as well. When we see the ethnographic data of the present day fish exploitation in this region, there are two different categories of fishing methods there. One is a completely commercialized fishing that is done in large scale. As part of this commercial fishing, they focus towards mostly lobsters and silver pomfret. It is in different seasons. During the summer season, they go for silver pomfret. During the winter they go for lobsters, and all these fish varieties they catch these days, they are all exported rather than local consumption. Along with that, these fishermen they also do this opportunistic fishing. This opportunistic fishing with the available infrastructure and within the estuary marine environment close to the coastal region is well comparable with the archaeological records. If you look at the opportunistic fishing or this ethnographic data from two fishing villages at Navinal and Jarpara, this is located towards the Mundra side of Kutch region, where you can see this blue color indications as archaeological record, the fish species or the quantity of fish that is coming from archaeological record, and on the other side this orange color represents the ethnographic record. If you look at that, mullet is the only species which is not available from the archaeological record, which could be because of the differential preservation possibly. Mughal cephalus has very delicate fish ponds. Probably that is the reason that we do not get this particular fish from the archaeological records. Meanwhile, most of the other fish have been there recorded in the archaeological record when we compare with the ethnographic record. Obviously, because of the over exploitation of the environment, certain fish have been less represented in the ethnographic record. If you see a Harappan seafood recipe, we have all these base ingredients. We have crabs and we have different kind of shellfish, especially these gastropods like Babylonia spirata, Thais carnivora, so many things. And along with that, we have these kind of oysters and clams, and also significant quantities of fish. And in addition to these, we have some data to support this in the form of lipid residue analysis conducted by many others like Kalyan Chakrabarti and also Ahana Ghosh. Their findings also tentatively at least identify some presence of marine fats. And this is also an indication of their cooking practices by using at least some of the pottery. And what along with that for flavoring these things, and obviously we have support of archaeobotanical remains in the form of different spices, oils, like these things have been reported from many archaeological sites, especially from the Harappan context. And obviously they have been probably doing a lot of mixing as well, with the animal products, especially the animal fats were probably mixing along with these things, which can also give a very very different kind of data when we do lipid residue analysis. So what is important here is that we know a lot of ingredients available to the Harappans. How exactly they mix these things, how exactly they combine it as a cuisine, that is not very clear, but it definitely offers a lot of scope for our imagination and really a food for thought. Let me conclude this. Fish and shells were just more than supplementary, and they seemed inevitable along with mammalian fauna. Actually, they were not just haphazardly exploiting these things. There was a kind of demand for these specific things, and they were trying to meet these specific dietary needs through the exploitation of fish and shellfish from many of these adjoining environments. We could identify at least 28 varieties of fish and a large number of molluscans. And fish exploitation was happening in 3 zones in the Gulf of Kutch region, and mostly from the marine estuarine environment. And of course, molluscan exploitation was happening in the adjoining mangrove regions. Interestingly, this freshwater fishery was marginal during the entire time, but it got intensified during the post-urban phases, especially towards the late Harappan phase. There is a difference in the utilization of marine fish in the inside and outside the fortifications. Obviously, the inside dwellers probably enjoyed the better catch or more marine fish. And there are evidences for decapitation of fish and long distance transportation of marine fish. And in a comparison with the ethnographic data, a lot of similarities and dissimilarities, some sort of differences can also be seen. And thank you very much. And here are some of my acknowledgements. My teachers, my colleagues who have been very helpful in bringing out this study through offering the faunal samples, which were very crucial, the faunal samples from very properly excavated context, and many other scholars and all these institutions I am thankful to because of the many different kinds of support they offered for accomplishing this kind of studies. Thank you very much, and thank once again the history enthusiast group for having me to hear me out. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you very much, Dr. Abhayan G.S., for providing us an in-depth exploration of animal-based subsistence in Harappan culture, especially based on ichthyoarchaeological remains from key sites such as Kanmer, Bagasra, uh, then Kotla, Bhadli, Shikarpur, and Navinal. And you have covered so many points from including ethnographic studies, contextualizing ancient practices with modern fishing practices, and also the Harappan seafood recipe, which was very interesting to note. You have given us site specific findings to help us understand in a better way. And also, another very interesting part of your lecture was the economic differentiation of the people of the time, where you highlighted how there were different species available or accessible to the people living inside and outside the fortifications. Your lecture has underscored the interconnectedness of ecology, economy, and subsistence of the Harappan civilization. And I thank you very much for giving us this very interesting talk.
Thank you.
So if you, with your permission, if we can take up a few questions which have been posted.
Please.
Yes. So the first question is by our honorary president, Shri Nandan Shastri sir. What is the paleo-environmental context of fossils of fishes in various sites in Gujarat as general?
Paleo environment, in terms of paleo environment, the thing is that what happened, how the environment was exactly during the Harappan times is not very clear. But what is then general consensus is that during the urban Harappan phase, there was slightly better environment, slightly better wet environment than what we see today there. Towards the late Harappan phase, there was some initiation of some kind of aridity that has been attested by many geological studies, and those could be a reason for some sort of shift in a lot of things, especially in certain cultural differences that is happening towards the late phase of the Harappan civilization. And also the decline is also assigned with this sort of paleo environmental reasons or slight change in the environment. And the fish species, the presence of fish species didn't change much because of the differences in the paleo environment. Of course, all those fishes have been almost represented in the archaeological record as well. That means that there has been no drastic change in terms of the presence of different fish varieties.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple of questions too. So I think you have covered some parts of it, but I will still ask it for the audience, benefit of the audience. Apart from dietary use, did fish bones and shells have any other symbolic, ritual, or any other economic significance to the Harappans?
Of course, shells have been of part of the craft production, especially certain species of fish, species of shells like Turbinella pyrum, Chicorius ramosus. These species have been extensively utilized for making different things like bangles and so many small antiquities. Some of the pictures I showed. And apart from that, from an economic point of view, fish for fish, we do not have any, we do not have evidence in large scale, but of course, we have some limited evidence in the form of modified fish bones. Like one example I showed with our vertebrae, they tried to make a bead kind of thing. And also they tried to make some kind of a tool like a pick or a needle out of a spine. Um, Probably they occasionally use some of these fish remains for uses other than food, but not very widely with the evidence we can say.
Thank you, sir. There is a question by Sudeep. Was fish a part of their trade network with other regions?
Of course, we have to believe so, because we get fish from from a very distant sites like Harappa, Kottadapalli, which is very far. The most of the fish we get from these sites, they have been transported from this long distance, and even these sites are not exactly located very close to the sea. At least is when you see Kanmir is slightly away from the sea. That means they have been exploiting fish. The fish landing site was somewhere, and from this fish landing site, the fish was coming to the site in different way. They were probably processing also. Probably they must have been selling. Then there must have been a category of people who have been exploiting this fish. They might have made their living out of these fishing activities. They must have been paid, and in addition to that, this long distance transportation could also happen. Especially if you see sea fish, the remains of sea fish, a 50 kilometer inside side, that means some people were demanding a specific kind of seafood there at Kottadapalli. So that could be the reason it was transported. And when it is transported in long distances, obviously there must be trade. And obviously from the Harappan.
Uh, yes. Thank you, sir. My next question, this is my question. Did Harappans have any specific techniques and tools that they were using to exploit aquatic animal resources? Like in the present day, we have certain techniques. So were they similar or different in any way?
That's thank you for that question. And from many sites, we get some kind of fishing gears like fish hooks. We get from in the artifact repertoire of from certain sites. Fish hooks are there made of copper. In addition to that, some of the artifacts have been assigned with the reason that they were utilized as net sinkers, especially the large sized bead kind of thing. Some of the columella made things, made out of shell, they might have been used as net sinkers. These are probably the tools they used. In addition to that, uh, some pottery drawings can be seen with a person holding a net kind of thing. Probably that was related to fishing. And even today, they capture fish in a particular way by utilizing the high tide and low tide situations in that happens in the creek region. When the high tide happens, they put some sort of gill nets over there. When the sea recedes back during the low tide, these fish will be trapped there. This kind of a trapping mechanism they still practice. Probably Harappans also attempted these kind of fishing methods or fishing techniques, but we have a very limited knowledge about the exact fishing gears they used. But luckily, some of the sites yield these kind of copper fish hooks. These are some obviously some indications to their fishing techniques.
Thank you, sir. The next question is by Rimjim Sharma. I think you have already covered this in your talk, but if you could just reiterate, was there any difference in the types of fishes found in citadel and common areas?
Yes, there are some differences that happens. especially towards the late part of the settlement, the inside dwellers were having more access to marine fish. Meanwhile, the outside dwellers were having very limited marine fish. Also, the larger fish remains, like especially from the fish, freshwater fish. They are also found mostly in the inside fortification. From the outside fortification, you can see a larger number of crab remains. That means they were having access to crab more than, or they preferred crab over marine fish.
Thank you, sir. Nandan sir has asked another question. What isotopic studies of animal remains from Dholavira revealed in context of paleo diet and mobility?
Yes, some isotope studies have been done. That is mostly done on the site of Bagasra, Shikarpur, and I think Jaidak also. And the studies indicate that there have been some movements of animals, especially some animals were sourced from slightly longer distances. That is basically they study by utilizing the strontium isotope studies. That has not been attempted in fish fauna or any of these marine fauna. That has been done on the mammalian remains, especially the fish, especially the sheep, goat, and cattle, buffalo category. Some of the studies reveal that they were most of the animals were utilized or raised in the immediate surroundings, but some studies and some samples represent the presence of animal from slightly longer distances.
Thank you, sir. Manuel Joseph sir has written, perhaps from Harappa, a Turbinella pyrum shell had its tip chopped off. Were these eaten and the flesh blown out before shell bangle processing was done? And he has also added, Krishna, it may be recalled, got the Shankha from later from mariners. I
Okay.
yeah.
Can you
Uh,
repeat that question?
yes, this is the first part of it. Perhaps from Harappa, a Turbinella pyrum shell had its tip chopped off. Were these eaten and the flesh blown out before shell bangles processing was done?
Yes, that is possible. When the Turbinella pyrum is processed, when they first cut off that apex portion, and then they start cutting this thing for basically for yielding bangles, shell bangles. And of course, if anything is coming out in the form of flesh, they could definitely eat. There is no harm in that. They might have done it, but we do not have any direct evidence for their consumption. But it is quite likely. Yes.
Thank you, sir. He has also added a recent publication by Rekha Rao suggested that some of the copper hoard objects like anthropomorphs and harpoons are actually for aquatic activities, that is, sinkers and anchors, etc. What is your view on this?
That is quite possible, but many of them are very large kind of tools. Apart from harpoons, I don't think many other tools are quite ideal for directly catching fish. Yeah, harpoons are quite possible tools for especially for catching larger sized fish.
Thank you, sir. There's one last question by me. Are there other archaeological sites in India with potential for similar ichthyoarchaeological studies, or are such studies already underway some places?
Uh, Yeah, there are so many sites in India with a lot of potential in terms of ichthyoarchaeology, but from many sites, the samples are not sent out for studying because there is a scarcity of people with expertise in fish remains, and also there is a limitation with the reference collection. The reference collection is the prerequisite for any ichthyoarchaeological study that is also not widely available in the country. In addition to this Harappan context, I have also tried doing fish remain analysis from different parts. Like One example is from Manikpatana, which is in Odisha. That is from the historical period. There also we have so many different kinds of fish species, and fish varieties have also been identified from the sites of Kerala. That is also from the historical period, medieval and late medieval periods. At the site of Kottapuram in Ernakulam district in Kerala, there we have conducted uh, some ichthyoarchaeological analysis. Otherwise, yes, there are so many sites with a lot of fish remains, but they are not properly studied because of the lack of people and lack of facilities.
Thank you very much, sir. I request Nidhi to read out the last two comments.
Yeah, sure, Manali. So there is a comment by Rimjim Sharma. Thank you so much. The lecture was really enlightening and informative. Professor Sushila has written a comment. Very interesting and informative session. Sir gave a deep insight of the topic. Excellent session. Thank you for organizing such an interesting talk.
Thank you so much.
So
And
we have a
thank
lot of congratulatory messages in the chat box, which itself is a mirror to the wonderful lecture. Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you, thank you so much.
thanking Sushila ji for joining us from University of Louisville as well. Uh, So now I think we have come to the end of today's lecture. Before going to the last part, sir, any message for the history enthusiasts, our audience, and for us young scholars who are new to this particular field? Like we have just been introduced to it.
Okay, no, what kind of message? I don't have any message as such. Anyway, what I have to say that archaeology itself is a very interesting area where a lot of things have not been explored in our country, unfortunately. Especially in my point of view, when I speak about my area of study and this region, this particular branch of archaeology is totally, I mean, not totally, largely kind of overlooked. In India, a lot of excavations happen every year, but all of those excavations, meanwhile, yield a lot of animal remains in the form of bones, fish bones, shells, a lot of things. But they are not properly treated or properly sent to zooarchaeologists for study. And for the study of these kind of specialized areas, there should be people coming up. There should be people who should be ready to give the samples for this kind of study. Then only this sort of results can be brought out. And if you look at this data set, I have only 5 sites representing the fish bones. Meanwhile, there have been a lot of different sites that have been excavated from 1930s onwards. A very few sites are available for this kind of studies. My request to historians and as well as archaeologists is that these sort of specialized studies should happen in a more frequent way so that a lot of different new things can be brought to light. And obviously, this kind of history enthusiast groups can spread this message well into the public as well. And otherwise, these things will be circulated only among certain academic community. And these kind of attempts are really appreciated because it can reach to the public and reach to the people who have some genuine interest in this kind of studies. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely. And to those young researchers who are watching today's lecture or who will watch, and those who are aspiring to take up studies in history and archaeology, I request you to explore such specialized, branches of archaeology as well, so that there are more experts coming out from among you, and this field can be developed further. So, thank you for this message, sir.
Thank you.
Nidhi, do you have anything to add?
It was really a worthy lecture, and we were introduced to a whole new concept of archaeology, which never was taught to us in the our PG syllabus or, in fact, during our research. Thank you so much, sir, for introducing us to a whole new concept. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we first wish to collaborate with you in future also with the history enthusiasts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I now request our honorary president, Shri Nandan Shastri, sir, to propose the vote of thanks. Sir, you have to unmute yourself.
I am well impressed.
Sir, you are on mute. Maybe.
You have muted yourself again.
I am well impressed by the vast knowledge and experience of Dr. Abhayan. Congratulations. And um, I have taught paleozoology for 10 years at Lawrence Hall of Science, University of California, Berkeley. And we all, the attendees, have learned a lot from your today's talk. And I thank Manali to introduce him, and I thank Nidhi for the overall contacting him and making this event possible. And I thank the audience also to take active part in Q&A also. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So thank Nandan sir for being present with us today and for proposing the vote of thanks. We have another lecture upcoming. It is today at 4:30 p.m. So I request the members of the audience to join us then, and see you all. Bye bye. Take care. We are signing off here.